Move! I am ordering you to move!
We're getting you off this plane one way or another.
The attack hit Ariana Holt the instant she stepped into the cabin. "Oh, hell no! Who put you in the front row?" Captain Lucas Brandt barked, voice dripping with ridicule. He didn't lower his tone. He didn't pretend professionalism. He wanted the entire aircraft to hear him. "Move! Now! That seat isn't meant for your kind." The words cracked through the premium cabin like a whip. Passengers stiffened. A flight attendant froze mid-step. Silence thickened around the insult. Ariana stood motionless, suitcase handle gripped lightly. 33 years old, warm brown skin, poised posture, braids pinned in a quiet crown. A simple navy travel suit, elegant but understated, because she preferred anonymity, not spectacle. Lucas Brandt, early 50s, sunburnt face, jaw clenched in arrogance, marched toward her like a man defending territory. Behind him swaggered Grant Walsh, his investor friend, gold watch flashing, eyes full of contemptuous amusement. Grant snorted. "Lucas, you sure she didn't wander in by mistake? She looks like she should be, somewhere else." He didn't finish the sentence, but everyone felt the unspoken prejudice pressing in the air. Ariana lifted her chin slightly. "This is the seat printed on my boarding pass." Lucas laughed, a harsh, humiliating sound. "Boarding pass?" he repeated mockingly. "Lady, you think a ticket gives you this seat? These rows are for high-tier passengers, people with status, not people who—" He stopped just short of saying the part that would expose him fully, but he didn't need to say it. The tone did the work for him. Ariana's stomach tightened. Passengers averted their eyes, not wanting trouble, not wanting to be seen choosing sides. Grant leaned in, inspecting her like she was some misplaced item. "Just move, sweetheart. You're delaying the important guests." Important meaning not her. Ariana's voice stayed calm but firm. "Sir, you're mistaken. This is the correct seat." Lucas smirked, a cruel stretch of the lips. "Listen carefully," he said, stepping closer, breath hot with disdain. "This is my plane, my rules, and people like you don't belong up here, unless I allow it, which I don't." Ariana blinked slowly. Inside her, humiliation burned like a swallowed flame. He continued, louder, crueler. "Go, find a seat that matches your background, or I'll have security escort you there once we land." The insult wasn't subtle. It wasn't coded. It was a slap disguised as protocol. A young flight attendant, eyes frightened, approached Ariana and whispered shakily, "Ma'am, please just move." "Captain Brandt, he gets worse when embarrassed." Worse? Ariana's heart sank for her. How many times had this crew lived in fear of this man? How many passengers had endured his tyranny in silence? Grant chuckled. "See? Even the staff know better. Go on, sweetheart. Back row's calling your name." Ariana felt her pulse in her ears. Her grandmother's voice rose in memory, a verse she clung to in moments like this. "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." Joshua 1:9. She exhaled, a long, slow breath that steadied the tremor inside her chest. Then she stood. Lucas spread his arms mockingly, bowing in a theatrical, insulting flourish. "There she goes. Knew she'd figure out her place eventually." Grant let out a loud laugh. Passengers whispered. Some pitied her. Some avoided her eyes, not wanting to risk being targeted next. Some nodded sympathetically, as if to say, "You did the right thing by not fighting him." But inside Ariana, something sharp took shape, something long dormant, something she had tried to tame with humility and invisibility. She walked down the aisle slowly, each step a blistering reminder of the humiliation she had endured. Her throat tightened, her vision flickered, not with tears, with rage, with clarity. Lucas had no idea who she was. He saw only a woman he could diminish, a woman he assumed held no power. He didn't know she was Ariana Holt, the billionaire who owned this aircraft, the aviation tech visionary whose innovations kept his plane flying, the majority shareholder of the corporation that signed his paycheck, and the granddaughter of a woman who survived worse humiliations than this and still taught her to walk with dignity. As she reached the back, passengers looked away from her pain, but Ariana's mind sharpened with every step. She would no longer choose invisibility. Not today. Not after this. Lucas had crossed a line drawn not just in company ethics, but in federal aviation safety laws. He had humiliated her, endangered crew morale, and publicly asserted prejudice from the very first breath. He thought she'd disappear quietly. He was wrong, because Ariana Holt wasn't just a passenger. She was the sky itself, and today, the sky was done being pushed aside. If you have ever been dismissed, humiliated, or told you didn't belong, then what happens next with Ariana Holt will ignite something fierce inside you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices to witness the unbelievable downfall of the man who thought he ruled the sky. Because the moment Ariana sits down, Lucas Brandt does something even worse. Ariana had barely settled into the cramped mid-cabin seat when Lucas Brandt strutted back down the aisle like a man inspecting his kingdom, ego swelling with every step. He didn't even pretend the visit was about safety or service. He came for her. "Well, look at that," Lucas sneered loudly enough for half the cabin to hear. She actually listened. "I was sure you'd put up some dramatic fuss. You people usually do." A ripple of discomfort moved through the passengers. A few glanced at Ariana with helpless sympathy. A few stared at the floor. A few, shamefully, smirked in agreement. Grant, Walsh, still in Ariana's rightful seat, raised his glass of champagne high and called out mockingly, "Cheers, Lucas. Smooth flight so far. Nothing ruins premium cabins more than—" His eyes slid to Ariana. Unqualified occupants. He didn't need to say more. The insult landed like a slap. Ariana held her posture straight, eyes steady. She had already endured the first blow. But this was turning into a public spectacle. Lucas folded his arms, standing over her. "Just doing what's necessary to keep standards," he said, as if he were discussing cleaning supplies. "We can't have the cabin looking like a charity shuttle." A couple rows ahead, a woman gasped. A man cleared his throat sharply, disapproving. Lucas snapped at him. "Problem?" The man shook his head and looked away, intimidated into silence. Ariana felt anger rising, a quiet flame behind her ribs, but she swallowed it. Not yet. Not here. Her eyes flicked to the cockpit door. She needed to see how Lucas behaved when he wasn't pretending to be a pilot in control. What she didn't expect was what happened next. The plane jolted violently, sharp, sudden, unnatural. Passengers yelped, a drink spilled, a child cried. But Ariana's trained mind noticed something immediately. No warning from the intercom, no atmospheric build, no cloud coverage. This wasn't weather. This was pilot manipulation. The plane jolted again. Worse this time. A flight attendant grabbed the nearest seat, knuckles white. Ariana leaned toward her, voice low but urgent. "What was that? That wasn't turbulence." The attendant swallowed hard, eyes darting toward the cockpit. Ma'am, he does this sometimes." Ariana's eyebrows drew in. "Does what?" The girl whispered even quieter. "He forces minor turbulence overrides to scare passengers he doesn't like. He calls it discipline through altitude." The words chilled Ariana more than the motion. Lucas, the man who humiliated her, the man who assumed she had no voice, no power, the man who weaponized his job. He tampered with autopilot settings to intimidate. This wasn't just arrogance. This was criminal negligence. As the plane steadied, Grant called out from the premium row, "Relax, everyone. Captain Brandt just knows how to handle people who act above their pay grade." Laughter, nervous, misplaced, sprinkled the cabin. Ariana's jaw tightened. Another flash, another jolt, again, unnatural. Lucas and Grant found it amusing. Passengers did not. Ariana pressed her palm to the side of her carry-on, tapping the hidden sensor inside her bracelet. Recording activated. She whispered to herself, "Not today. I'm not letting this slide." The timid young flight attendant from earlier approached with a shaky cup of water. She whispered, trembling, barely audible, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. If he thinks someone doesn't belong in first class, he makes their flight miserable." Ariana leaned in. "Has he done this before?" The girl nodded, eyes glossy. "Too many times. But nobody files complaints because management always sides with pilots. And he's close with some big investors, like that man up front." Her voice cracked. "He once threatened to fire me for talking back." Ariana stared straight into her eyes. "You shouldn't have to be afraid of the person flying your plane." The girl bit her lip. "We all are." Lucas reappeared, swaggering, holding a tablet with fake authority. He pointed it at Ariana. "I should have known you'd be the type to complain about turbulence. Let me guess, first flight in a real aircraft?" Ariana raised an eyebrow. "A real aircraft? Or one that's improperly handled by its captain?" The passenger sucked in a breath. Lucas's face reddened. "Watch your tone." "No," Ariana said, voice low, even, razor sharp. "You watch your altitude settings." A man 3 seats up coughed hard, pretending to hide his shock. Lucas leaned down, bringing his face inches from Ariana's. "You think you understand anything about aviation?" Her eyes didn't waver. "I understand sabotage disguised as turbulence." Grant stood up behind Lucas. "Oh, fantastic. Now she's a flight expert, too." But Ariana noticed something behind the jokes. A flicker of fear. They didn't expect her to know anything. They didn't expect her to question them. They certainly didn't expect her to record them. Ariana forced her breathing steady, feeling a new clarity settle into her bones. She could expose them. She would expose them. But first, she needed more, and she was going to get it. The cabin was quiet in that tense, unnatural way where every breath felt borrowed. Ariana sat perfectly still, her mind sharpening like steel. She could feel the shift in the air, the unease spreading, the quiet fear pulsing through the crew every time Lucas's heavy footsteps sounded from the cockpit. But the next person who approached her didn't bring hostility. They brought a warning. A man in his late 30s, slim build, pale complexion, uniform slightly rumpled as though he'd been fighting internal battles for years, stepped into the aisle. His name tag read First Officer Henry Cole. He didn't look at her directly at first. His eyes scanned the passengers, then the cockpit door, then the cabin camera. Only when he was certain Lucas was busy, he inhaled deeply and crouched slightly beside Ariana's row. His voice came out thin, almost cracked. "Ma'am, I need to tell you something. It's not safe." Ariana's posture tightened. Henry swallowed hard, like the words tore at him. "It wasn't turbulence earlier," he whispered. "It was Captain Brandt. He overrode the autopilot sensitivity." Ariana met his eyes, kind eyes worn down by years of intimidation. "I suspected that," she said quietly. Henry's shoulders sagged, a small relief. Most passengers never notice, but pilots, real pilots, can feel when something is wrong. You felt it." Ariana didn't blink. "I did." He exhaled shakily, gathering the courage he clearly hadn't been allowed to express before. "Lucas has a history of doing this. If he thinks someone is out of line, he'll teach them a lesson." Henry's voice dropped lower. He calls it adjusting the altitude of entitlement. Ariana's blood chilled. A phrase so cruel, so mocking, so laced with racism and class suppression, it felt like poison dripping from a wound. The reality struck her. This wasn't his first victim, and if no one stopped him, it wouldn't be his last. Ariana leaned in slightly. "Why hasn't he been reported?" Henry let out a broken laugh. "We tried. God knows we tried. But he's protected by people with power, investors like Grant, executives who want pilots who control their flights. It's easier for them to silence the crew than confront someone who brings in private clients. Ariana's throat tightened. How many? She whispered. Henry's voice cracked. Too many. He's endangered people. He's screamed at staff. He's overridden safety protocols. There was even an incident where... He stopped suddenly as a shadow passed across the aisle. Lucas. Henry froze like prey sensing the predator. Lucas didn't notice their conversation. He was too busy berating a flight attendant for pouring water too loudly. But the moment he disappeared again, Henry leaned closer, urgency trembling through him. Ma'am, you need to know, Lucas is unstable today. More than usual. Grant told him some executives are questioning his performance. He thinks someone on this flight might be evaluating him. Ariana held his gaze. I see. You're already in his line of fire, Henry whispered. He's convinced you're challenging his authority. And when Lucas feels challenged, Ariana finished the sentence for him. He becomes dangerous. Henry nodded, swallowing hard. Then he did something unexpected. He reached into his pocket, hands shaking, and pressed a folded piece of paper into Ariana's palm. She opened it discreetly. Inside were flight logs, real ones, unedited, different from the ones Lucas had shown earlier. Ariana's eyes widened slightly. These logs, these charts, these discrepancies, she murmured. Henry nodded again. He's been falsifying records for months, maybe years. Ariana looked at him, devastated by the fear in his eyes. How long have you worked under him? Henry looked down. 8 years. 8 years of silence. 8 years of witnessing abuse he wasn't allowed to speak about. 8 years of surviving a cockpit ruled by fear. He whispered, Sometimes I ask God why he put me in this cockpit, why he hasn't taken me out yet. Then I remember the verse I kept in my wallet. He closed his eyes and recited softly, Let us run with endurance, the race that is set before us. Hebrews 12:1. Ariana felt something deep shift inside her. An ache, a resonance, a calling. Endurance. Yes. But endurance was not submission. Ariana folded the logs carefully. Henry, she whispered, I need you to do something once we land. Henry's breath hitched. You're not filing a complaint, are you? They'll bury it. They always do. Ariana leaned closer, her voice steady as steel. No, Henry, I'm not filing a complaint. He blinked, confused. She continued, I'm going to expose him. His eyes widened with something that looked like hope and fear mixed. How? He breathed. Ariana's gaze dropped to the bracelet on her wrist, the tiny indicator light pulsing softly. I have evidence, and now I have logs. I'm not just another passenger, and I am not afraid of Lucas Brandt. Henry stared at her for a long moment. Then, for the first time, he straightened his spine. You're different, he whispered. No passenger has ever spoken to him like that. No one ever noticed his violation so fast. You're not ordinary, are you? Ariana held his gaze, her voice soft but unbreakable. No, I'm not. Before she could say more, a glass shattered up front. Grant's mocking laughter cut through the cabin. A passenger shouted something. A flight attendant ran forward. Chaos was brewing. Henry flinched, knowing exactly what that meant. He whispered urgently, Be careful, please. He's spiraling. Ariana nodded, but as she watched Lucas berate another crew member, his voice rising, his temper slipping, she wasn't afraid. She was ready. If you've ever uncovered a truth so dark it changed the way you breathed, then what Ariana learns next will shake you deeply. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Dignity Voices as this sky-high confrontation escalates beyond control. Because the next time the plane jolts, it won't be an accident. The hum of the engines had changed, not loud enough for an average passenger to notice, but Ariana felt it immediately. an uneven vibration traveling through the cabin floor. Her instincts sharpened, Henry's warning replayed in her mind. He's unstable today, and he thinks someone is evaluating him. Lucas Brandt was a man built from ego and adrenaline, and right now the cockpit door might as well have been the gate to a powder keg. Ariana tightened her grip on her bracelet, watching the cabin with a hunter's quiet focus. It came without warning. A sudden violent dip. Passengers screamed, cups flew, an overhead bin rattled hard enough to pop open. But again, no warning from the intercom, no atmospheric reason, no shift in altitude on the cabin screen. This was not turbulence. This was Lucas Brandt tightening his grip on the plane like a child, shaking a toy. A man 2 rows ahead shouted, "Hey, what the hell was that?" Lucas's voice boomed from the front. "Everyone sit down. Maybe if some passengers weren't creating stress for the crew, the flight would be smoother." His glare targeted Ariana like a missile. Grant, still lounging with champagne in Ariana's rightful seat, added loudly, "Some people don't realize their attitude affects a pilot's focus. It's basic aviation psychology." Ariana couldn't help the internal scoff. Psychology wasn't the issue. This was punishment. This was control. This was a captain misusing authority to intimidate. A flight attendant stumbled toward Ariana, bracing against the seats. Her voice was a whisper filled with dread. "Ma'am, please stop talking to him. He's getting worse because he thinks you're a threat." Ariana turned slowly. "I am," she said quietly. The attendant's eyes widened, not in fear of Ariana, but in awe. No one had ever dared challenge Lucas. Ariana pulled out the folded logs Henry had given her and studied them discreetly. Fuel usage inconsistencies, autopilot alterations, manual overrides without recorded justification, missing timestamps. The pattern was clear. Lucas had been falsifying data for months, possibly longer. But what caught her breath was a handwritten notation. Private client adjustment. No report next to a flight number. What adjustment? For which client? And why no report? She leaned forward, mind racing. Then she noticed something new. A faint vibration in the cabin wall, subtle but rhythmic. Manual controls. He was hand-flying the aircraft more aggressively than necessary. People didn't jostle out of their seats during genuine turbulence. This was targeted brutality. The bracelet on Ariana's wrist buzzed gently. Evidence secured. The audio capture was recording cockpit vibration signals, a feature she'd invented for better black box accuracy. Lucas had no idea that every reckless move he made was being documented by the cutting-edge tech designed by the woman he'd humiliated. Grant sauntered out of the premium seat like he owned the cabin, strolling toward Ariana with a smirk. He leaned against her row. "So, enjoying your new seat? Plenty of people like you prefer the back anyway, right?" Passengers flinched. One woman whispered, "Oh my God," under her breath. Grant continued, voice dripping with contempt. "Lucas says he's giving you a lesson in hierarchy. And honestly, you're lucky. A lot of pilots would have thrown you off before takeoff." Ariana's eyes locked on his. "Is that what you think should have happened?" Grant chuckled darkly. "It's what usually does. Entitled passengers get put in their place." Ariana's lips curved in a slow, chilling smirk. "Funny," she said, "because you have no idea whose place you're sitting in." Grant blinked, thrown off by the sudden shift in her tone. "You're bold," he muttered. "For someone without status." Ariana's eyes glinted. "I didn't say I lacked status. I said you don't know whose seat you stole." Grant froze, just for a second, just enough for the first crack of fear to creep into his features. A senior flight attendant, older and steadier, approached Ariana quietly. Her voice was firm, but lined with decades of exhaustion. "Ma'am, I need to tell you the truth." Ariana leaned in. "Go on." "Captain Brandt has been reported before, more than once, but every complaint disappears. He knows people, investors, executives. They consider him valuable. We're told to stay quiet." Ariana swallowed the rage rising in her throat. How long has this been happening? Since before I joined. And I've been flying for 16 years. 16 years of fear. 16 years of abuse disguised as authority. 16 years of voices silenced to protect a dangerous man. The attendant's gaze softened. But when you stood up to him, I saw something change. In the crew, in the passengers, in myself. Ariana nodded slowly. Someone has to stop him. The attendant whispered, I think you can. The plane suddenly tilted, an unnatural stomach-dropping angle that sent drinks falling and passengers screaming. Ariana braced herself, but she watched the direction of the tilt, too sharp, too sudden, too controlled. Lucas wasn't losing control, he was showing control, demonstrating dominance, punishing her, punishing anyone who dared speak up. Passengers cried out, Is this safe? What is he doing? Somebody tell the pilot. Ariana stood. The cabin gasped. She walked down the aisle toward the cockpit door, steady, unshaking, deliberate. Grant grabbed her arm. Oh, no, you don't. Sit down. Ariana pulled her arm back with a force that stunned him. Her eyes were fire. If he's endangering lives, she said calmly, I have every right to speak to him. Grant sputtered. Sit down. Now. Ariana continued walking, voice low but resonant. I'm not afraid of him, and I'm not afraid of you. Passengers watched with wide, trembling eyes as she reached the cockpit door, where the next scene would ignite the fuse that blew the entire flight open. The cockpit door loomed in front of Ariana like the entrance to a battlefield. Passengers held their breath as she lifted her hand and knocked. Once, firm, steady. The sound cut through the cabin like a warning bell. Inside, something crashed. Then Lucas Brandt's voice erupted. Who the hell is banging on my cockpit door? He jerked the door open with the fury of a man whose ego had just been challenged in the one place he believed himself untouchable. His face was flushed, sweating, almost wild. What do you want? He spat. Haven't you caused enough damn chaos? Ariana didn't flinch. You're endangering this aircraft, she said evenly, and I want to know why you're overriding autopilot without reporting it. A hush fell over the plane. Lucas's eyes bulged, the vein in his neck tightening. You think you know aviation? He snarled. You think you can question a man with 26 years of flying under his belt? Ariana's voice stayed calm. I think you're abusing your authority. Passengers murmured, fear, shock, admiration blending into a rising tide. Grant appeared behind Lucas, gripping the headrest, sneering. Oh, look, she's lecturing the captain again. Shouldn't you be grateful we let you on this aircraft at all? Ariana turned her gaze on him. You should be careful, she said softly. You're closer to causing a federal offense than you realize. Grant's expression slipped, just for a split second. Lucas leaned in so close Ariana could feel the heat of his rage. Back up, right now, before I restrain you. You don't have the legal right to restrain me, Ariana replied. A cruel smile twisted across his mouth. I have the right to do whatever I damn well want. My plane, my rules. Ariana straightened her shoulders. That's where you're mistaken. She tapped her bracelet twice, subtle, almost invisible. A tiny blue light pulsed, recording confirmed. Henry, the first officer, suddenly stepped out of the cockpit behind Lucas. His face was pale, stricken, trembling with something between fear and courage. Captain, he said, voice soft, you're escalating. We need to return to stable autopilot. Lucas whipped around. Get back inside and shut up. Henry didn't move. Ariana glanced at him, the man who had endured 8 years of this nightmare. Henry, she said, keeping her voice steady. Is it true? Has the captain been overriding safety protocols? Lucas spun back toward her. You shut your mouth! Passengers gasped. Henry swallowed hard. Yes, he whispered. It's true. Lucas lunged toward him, but Ariana stepped between them. Lucas's fury broke loose in a roar that shook the cabin. If either of you say one more word, I swear, I will crash this damn jet before I let you ruin me. The cabin erupted into screams. People grabbed seats. A baby cried. A woman fainted. And Lucas, red-faced and heaving, realized too late. Every word had been captured by the cabin camera, and Ariana's bracelet was uploading it in real time. Ariana stared at him, not blinking. You just threatened the lives of everyone on board. Lucas froze. Grant stumbled backward, face draining of color. Passengers began shouting, "He threatened to crash the plane! Get him away from the controls! Do something! Protect the cockpit!" Ariana lifted her wrist. The bracelet pulsed again. "Your threat has been recorded and transmitted," she said. "Step away from the cockpit, now." Lucas's voice cracked with panic. "Turn that off! You have no right!" Ariana's voice was calm, resolute, unshakable. "I have every right, and you will never touch those controls again." Henry stepped fully into the doorway now, chest rising and falling rapidly, but his eyes no longer held fear. They held resolve. "Captain," he said steadily, "I am assuming command under FAA Emergency Protocol 121.557. You are a danger to this aircraft." Lucas stared at him like he'd been stabbed. "You traitor!" he hissed. "You worthless little—" Henry raised his voice. "Sit down, Captain Brandt. This is no longer your flight." Passengers cheered. Some cried in relief. Grant grabbed Lucas's arm. "Lucas, stop! Stop! This is federal! This is prison time stuff!" Lucas shook him off. But the cabin had turned. Ariana had turned it. The fear that once crawled through the plane had transformed into collective outrage. Passengers stood. Flight attendants formed a barrier. A man near row 6 shouted, "Let the first officer fly! Get him away from the controls!" 2 attendants stepped forward, urging Lucas back. "Captain, please," one said, trembling. "You need to sit down." Lucas looked around, wild, trapped, cornered. "This is my plane," he screamed. "I decide what happens." Ariana stepped forward again, eyes steady. "No, Captain Brandt," she said. "This is my plane." A stunned silence fell. Grant froze. Lucas blinked rapidly, confusion battling fury. What are you talking about?" he stuttered. Ariana's voice lowered, not triumphant but powerful. "You have been flying a jet owned by Holt Aviation Technologies. I am Ariana Holt, and I am your employer." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Grant's mouth fell open. Lucas staggered back like he'd been struck. You're the owner?" he choked. Ariana spoke the Bible sentence Henry whispered earlier, letting it anchor the moment. "Let us run with endurance the race set before us." Hebrews 12:1. Then she faced Lucas fully. "And your race as a pilot ends today." Henry pushed past Lucas gently but firmly and returned to the cockpit. The intercom crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is First Officer Henry Cole. We are declaring an emergency landing. You are safe. Please remain seated." Passengers broke into relieved sobs. Grant collapsed into a seat, sweating. Lucas stood frozen, unable to grasp the destruction he had created. Ariana turned, addressing the attendants. "Secure the cabin. Restrain anyone who tries to interfere." Her voice carried the weight of command. Lucas finally snapped. "You'll pay for this." Ariana locked eyes with him. "No, Lucas, you will." If you've ever watched a bully crumble under the truth, what happens when this plane touches down will leave you breathless. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices, because justice is descending fast. Because on the runway, Ariana isn't the only one waiting for him. Federal agents are too. The cabin lights flickered as First Officer Henry Cole took the controls. The plane leveled out, the violent shudders fading into a tense, fragile calm. A silence so sharp it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. Ariana remained standing in the aisle, unwavering. Passengers stared at her with something close to reverence, as though the woman Lucas had tried to humiliate had suddenly become the only anchor holding the sky together. Lucas Brandt, red-faced, sweating, trembling with disbelief, stood pressed against the cockpit wall, his authority stripped as cleanly as if someone had cut the wings off his uniform. Grant Walsh whispered harshly, "Lucas, they recorded everything. We're finished." But Lucas wasn't listening. His gaze drifted in a dazed loop. Cockpit to passengers, passengers to Ariana, Ariana back to the cockpit, as though the world had collapsed in a circle around him. Henry's voice cracked through the intercom, steady despite the tremor underneath. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are initiating an emergency descent. Please fasten your seat belts. You are safe." Safe! The word felt like a blessing. Ariana moved through the cabin with quiet authority, checking seat belts, offering reassurances to frightened passengers, assisting attendants who still shook with adrenaline. A woman clasped Ariana's hand. "You saved us," she whispered. A man across the aisle whispered through tears, I thought we were going to die." Ariana squeezed his shoulder gently. "You're safe now," she said. "I promise." Behind her, Lucas muttered hysterically, "You can't do this. I'm the captain. I decide. I'm the authority." Ariana turned slowly. "Your authority ended the moment you threatened this aircraft." Her voice was soft, but the softness was steel. Lucas backed into a seat, collapsing into it as if gravity no longer obeyed him. Grant pushed forward, face pale with panic. "Ariana, listen. I didn't know he'd go this far. You can't include me in this. I didn't do anything." Ariana tilted her head. "You assaulted crew members. You verbally harassed passengers. You encouraged Lucas's behavior. You obstructed safety operations." Grant's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "But I'm an investor. You can't treat me like some criminal." Ariana stared directly into his eyes. "You became a criminal the moment you interfered with the safety of this flight." Grant sunk into the nearest seat, defeated. Outside the windows, the clouds thinned to reveal the airport below, surrounded by flashing blue and red lights. Passengers gasped. A line of emergency vehicles waited on the runway. Several black SUVs were parked alongside fire trucks. A helicopter hovered above like a metallic sentinel. And then, 3 white SUVs with the gold-lettered seal. Federal Aviation Administration, Enforcement Division. Ariana took a slow breath. She wasn't afraid. She was ready. Lucas saw the vehicles and broke completely. "No! No, no, no!" His legs shook violently. His breaths came rapid and shallow. I can't lose my license. I can't lose everything. I didn't mean what I said. She provoked me. She set me up." Ariana turned to him, her voice quiet and devastating. "You set your own trap, Lucas. I simply refuse to walk around it." Lucas grabbed for a passing attendant's arm. "Tell them I didn't mean it. Tell them I was joking. Tell them—" The attendant pulled away, tears in her eyes. "You threatened all of us, Captain." Lucas flinched as if struck. Henry's voice cut through the cabin. "Prepare for landing." The plane descended smoothly, a sharp contrast to the chaos Lucas had created. The wheels hit the runway with a clean, controlled thump. Passengers burst into applause, sobs, and shaken laughter, relief flooding the cabin like warm light breaking through a storm. Ariana closed her eyes for a moment. A verse rose naturally, unforced from her lips. "But thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." 1 Corinthians 15:57. Victory, not for ego, not for revenge, but for truth, for safety, for the people Lucas had terrorized for years. When the plane taxied to a stop, paramedics approached first, checking for injured passengers. Then came the agents, FAA enforcement officers, airport police, a federal marshal. As soon as the door cracked open, the lead agent called out, "Where is Captain Lucas Brandt?" Lucas tried to stand. He couldn't. His knees buckled, and he landed back in the seat. He whispered, "Broken." "No, Please, don't. The agents boarded swiftly, moving with practiced precision. Passengers pointed simultaneously. There! That's him! He threatened to crash the plane! He endangered all of us! He abused the crew! Lucas shook his head rapidly, desperate. No, she provoked me. She tricked me. She's lying. An agent said, "We watched the live recording upload from 34,000 feet. Sit down, Captain." Lucas went still. He hadn't realized Ariana's bracelet transmitted everything in real time. The reality crushed him. Before they escorted Lucas out, the FAA director approached Ariana. "Ms. Holt?" he asked carefully. Lucas blinked, confused. Grant's jaw fell open. Ariana nodded politely. "Yes." The director inclined his head. "We suspected you were on board when we received the emergency broadcast. Your bracelet technology was instrumental to the evidence. We thank you." Gasps echoed across the cabin. Passengers stared in disbelief. "That's Ariana Holt? The Billionaire aviation tech founder? She owns the plane? She saved us." Even the crew looked stunned. Ariana bowed her head humbly. "I'm just glad everyone is safe." Lucas let out a strangled noise, somewhere between a sob and disbelief. You're the owner? Of the company? Of this plane?" Ariana met his eyes. "Yes, Lucas." He collapsed back into the seat, defeated in every way. Agents cuffed him gently, almost respectfully, because the humiliation itself was punishment enough. "Captain Lucas Brandt, you are under arrest for endangering an aircraft. Terroristic threats, interference with a flight crew, reckless operation, falsification of flight logs, abuse of authority." Lucas didn't speak. For the first time in decades, he had no voice left to wield. Grant reached out in panic. "What about me? I didn't do anything serious." An agent responded coldly. "You'll be answering for assault and interference with aviation safety." Grant crumbled. The hangar felt like a courtroom suspended inside an aircraft shell. Floodlights washed over rows of folding chairs filled with crew members, union reps, mechanics, junior pilots, and a cluster of executives shifting uncomfortably in their suits. At the center was a podium beneath the gleaming tail of Ariana's jet. The large screen behind it glowed with a frozen frame of Lucas Brandt at the cockpit door, face twisted in rage, and walking toward the microphone, no longer hidden, no longer silent. Ariana Holt. No hoodie, no anonymity, just a simple charcoal dress, braids pinned neatly back, and the unshakable calm of someone who had already faced her storm. Two federal agents escorted Lucas inside. Still in his uniform, cuffs on his wrists, eyes wild with disbelief. He looked less like a captain and more like a man watching the last of his arrogance crumble beneath him. Grant Walsh sat nearby, also cuffed, face pale and damp with panic. The hangar buzzed. Anger, fear, outrage, vindication. Then Ariana spoke, and the room fell still. "My name is Ariana Holt," she began, voice smooth, resonant. "I own Holt Aviation Technologies, the parent company of the airline you work for. 3 hours ago, I was ordered out of my own seat by a captain who believed I didn't belong there." Gasps rippled through the workers who had never met their owner face to face. Ariana lifted her wrist, tapping her bracelet. The screen flickered. Then Lucas's voice exploded across the hangar. "I swear, I will crash this damn jet before I let you ruin me." The recording continued, passengers screaming, Henry stepping up, Ariana's revelation of her identity. When it ended, a heavy silence replaced the air entirely. Ariana turned toward the employees. "This isn't just about a bad flight," she said. "This is about a culture that protected the powerful instead of the vulnerable." A senior union rep, gray hair, sharp eyes, stepped forward. "We filed complaints against Captain Brandt for 15 years, she said. "Threats, intimidation, unreported turbulence events, coercion. Nothing was ever done." A mechanic raised a hand. "He pressured us to sign off on inspections we hadn't finished." A flight attendant added, He chose who to humiliate. He targeted certain passengers. We lived in fear. A junior pilot said quietly, "He rewrote logs. I reported it. They reassigned me." Ariana listened, each testimony a weight she welcomed, because the truth had waited too long. She nodded slowly. There is a verse that says, "For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest." Luke 8:17 today. Everything comes to light. An FAA investigator stepped to the podium. Following review of evidence, Captain Lucas Brandt will be charged with endangering an aircraft, terroristic threats, falsification of flight data, interference with a flight crew, abuse of authority. He turned toward Lucas. "Your pilot's license is revoked permanently." Lucas shook his head violently. "You can't do this. I served this airline. I brought in business. One mistake. One. And you're destroying me?" Ariana stepped closer, calm and unblinking. One mistake does not terrorize an entire crew for years. One mistake doesn't falsify logs. One mistake doesn't threaten to crash a jet full of innocent people. Her words were surgical, precise, undeniable. Lucas sagged, strength draining out of him. Another officer read Grant's charges. "Grant Walsh, you are charged with assault, interference with aviation operations, and aiding misconduct." Grant's head jerked up. "I didn't know he'd go that far. I was just joking. Just backing him up." Ariana looked at him with quiet disappointment. "You enjoyed it until the consequences appeared. That's not ignorance. That's complicity." Grant looked away, shame replacing denial. The employees watched Ariana with raw, intense attention. Many had never seen a CEO stand before them, certainly not with sincerity. Ariana inhaled deeply. "I built this company to make aviation safer. I believed improving systems, technology, and training would be enough." She swallowed. "But I allowed myself to stay invisible, and in my silence, people like Lucas were celebrated, while people like you were punished for speaking up." Crew members blinked hard, some holding back tears. "No more," Ariana said. "I will no longer protect the wrong people." She lifted her chin, authority settling over her like armor. "From today forward, every crew member will have direct, protected reporting channels. No pilot's reputation will outweigh passenger safety. Any form of intimidation toward crew or passengers will result in immediate suspension pending investigation. All previous complaints ignored or buried will be reopened." A wave of emotion moved through the employees. Relief, disbelief, hope. For the first time, Ariana realized they weren't looking at her as a billionaire. They were looking at her as a leader. Lucas suddenly surged forward, voice cracked with desperation. "You'll regret this," he shouted. "You can't run an airline by letting the weak complain their way into power." The room recoiled. Ariana didn't. She walked right up to him, close enough that he finally had to see her as a human being, not someone he could belittle. "I'm not ruining your life," she said softly. "You ruined your own." Lucas's breath hitched. "You think you're better than me because you own this place?" Ariana shook her head. "No, I am better than you because I don't misuse power to hurt people." The agents pulled him back. This time Lucas didn't resist. He had nothing left to stand on. Ariana returned to the podium. "For years, you all endured storms no one acknowledged. Today, we rebuild the sky you deserve to work in." People stood, some clapped, some cried, some simply placed a hand over their hearts, an unspoken thank you. Ariana's voice softened. "I stayed invisible for too long, but invisibility is no way to protect people. Today, I step forward, not as a hidden owner, not as a distant executive, but as someone who believes every flight, every crew member, every passenger deserves dignity." Behind her, Lucas was escorted out in cuffs, passing the very workers he had stepped over. Not one bowed their head to him. The only head bowed was his. Ariana watched him leave, then turned to her employees, her people. The storm was over. Tomorrow they would rebuild the sky. The press conference was supposed to be small, just a brief statement to confirm the details of the midair emergency. But by the time Ariana Holt stepped onto the platform outside the hangar, the space had transformed into a sea of cameras, microphones, journalists, aviation analysts, passengers from the flight, and employees who refused to go home until they saw the woman who had saved them. The sun was dipping into a warm orange haze behind the runway, casting a glow around Ariana that looked almost symbolic, light reclaiming a sky darkened by arrogance and abuse. She adjusted the microphone, her bracelet glinting faintly, still holding every second of the truth that had brought them here. At first, she didn't speak. She really looked, at the crowd, frightened passengers who had nearly died, crew members who had found their voices again, employees who'd spent years bowing their heads under a system that chose silence over justice. Somewhere behind the rows of reporters, Ariana spotted First Officer Henry Cole. His posture was straighter now, his shoulders no longer weighted with fear. When their eyes met, he nodded, once, deeply, an entire conversation in a single movement. Courage, endurance, truth, Ariana began. 3 hours ago, she said, her voice measured, I boarded a plane intending to travel quietly, like I often do. I wanted anonymity, privacy, the comfort of blending into the background. She paused. But silence and invisibility do not protect anyone. In fact, they allow the wrong people to speak louder. A murmur rippled through the press. I was humiliated on my own aircraft, she continued, not because of a misunderstanding, but because a man in authority believed he had the right to define who belongs in the front row. She let that statement settle. You've seen the footage. You've heard the words. The threat made against me, the crew, and the passengers was not a moment of stress. It was a pattern of behavior that had gone unchallenged for years. Cameras clicked like distant thunder. And today, Ariana said, her voice strengthening, that pattern ends. She turned slightly toward the massive hangar where the truth had been exposed. I've spent most of my career behind the scenes, building safer systems, better technology, smarter aviation solutions. But technology doesn't fix culture, policies don't fix fear, and title alone doesn't fix injustice. People leaned forward, breath held. So this is my promise. From this moment forward, Holt Aviation is rebuilding its sky, not just its aircraft. She raised a hand slightly, counting each point. 1. Safety reports will go directly to an independent panel. Crew and passengers will no longer be dismissed or silenced. No pilot, no matter how decorated, will remain above accountability. Every seat, from cockpit to last row, will be governed by dignity. Employees applauded first. Passengers soon joined. Even reporters lowered their cameras for a moment, moved by the clarity in her voice. Ariana looked up into the fading sky as if addressing something far beyond the crowd. For anyone who has ever been overlooked, dismissed, underestimated, told you don't belong in the places you've worked twice as hard to reach, let today remind you of something. Her voice softened but deepened with emotion. You don't need permission to sit in the front row of your own life, and you never owe respect to a bully pretending to be a leader. The wind carried her words across the tarmac. Then she stepped back from the microphone, offering a final, gentle smile, the kind that held both empathy and triumph. The press exploded into questions, but Ariana didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her truth had already taken flight. As the last light of evening settled across the runway, Ariana watched her jet, her creation, her responsibility, with a renewed sense of purpose. She had always been a woman of systems, of quiet intelligence, of genius hidden behind modesty. But today reminded her that silence was a kind of sky too, one that could be darkened or illuminated by choice. Power used to uplift is leadership. Power used to intimidate is tyranny. And sooner or later, tyranny always comes crashing down. Ariana reflected on her grandmother's words. God did not make you to shrink. He made you to stand. And now she finally understood. The world didn't need another silent founder. It needed a visible protector, someone who defended dignity the way pilots defend altitude. She turned back toward the cameras, knowing millions would soon watch this story unfold. If this story moved you, if you believe dignity belongs to everyone, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices, because every week we tell the stories of those who refused to be pushed aside and rose higher because of it. Ariana Holt walked forward, not just reclaiming her seat, but the entire sky,